This is Mission Control Houston. Integrity systems in excellent shape. The crew currently in a conference with Flight Director Rick Henfling to review entry and splashdown procedures and elements of their flight data file, along with the rest of the flight plan for the remainder of the mission. The crew tomorrow on entry day will wake up at 10:35 a.m. Central Time to begin their final day in space. They'll begin to configure the crew cabin, completing all of the stowage of items that they no longer will need. They have already begun that task. This is basically cleanup day today. They'll be configuring the cabin for entry and preparing their launch and entry suits. There is another return trajectory correction burn that is scheduled at 1:53 p.m. Central Time on Friday. That's the final big burn that will clean up and tweak any further trajectory maneuvers to make sure that Integrity is moving in the correct orientation with the right angle of attack as it enters the corridor, a cone if you will, across the Pacific Ocean for arrival at the splashdown site off the coast of San Diego. Although we are broadcasting 24/7 on the YouTube channel, continuous coverage all the way through the time the crew is on the recovery ship tomorrow evening, NASA Plus coverage will join in simulcasting all of this at 5:30 p.m. Central Time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday afternoon and evening. At 6:15 p.m. Central Time on Friday, we'll hand over communications links from the Deep Space Network to the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite System. Just 18 minutes later, at 6:33 p.m. Central Time on Friday, the crew module will separate from the European service module. And just 4 minutes later, at 6:37 p.m. Central Time, the crew module thrusters will fire for about 18 seconds to nudge the aft end of the vehicle upward, basically reorienting the vehicle for the most favorable angle of attack as it enters the Earth's atmosphere. In rapid-fire succession at that point, at 6:53 p.m. Central Time, the vehicle and its 4 astronauts will enter the Earth's atmosphere at an altitude of 400,000 feet, traveling 34,882 feet per second. Range to touchdown, 1,701 nautical miles. Now, just 24 seconds after entry interface, heat will begin to build up around the vehicle, raising the temperature around the vehicle to about 4,000 to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and we will enter about a 6-minute blackout period at 6:53 and 54 seconds p.m. Central Time. This is expected. It is not unusual. We will have a loss of data and a loss of voice from the crew for about a 6-minute period because of the ionization, the plasma buildup around the vehicle as the heat shield repels the heat from the velocity of entry. During that blackout period and the period of peak heating, the G-forces on the crew will build to about 3.9 Gs, which is well within the limits planned for this mission. Integrity will conduct 2 role reversals, one to the left, one to the right during this period of time, actually the first pair of 5 such role reversals that will be commanded by computer to bleed off excess speed as the vehicle descends into the thicker regions, the denser regions of the Earth's atmosphere. We will emerge from that blackout period at 6:59 and 56 seconds p.m. Central Time. And the blackout period ending should result in a resumption of communications with the crew. We'll be calling them to make sure that they can hear us, and and we'll be waiting for their response. And at that point, we'll be just 7 minutes away from splashdown. The chute deployment sequence will occur in several stages. There are a total of 11 parachutes for Orion to slow its speed from a peak velocity of about 32 times the speed of sound to a splashdown velocity of just 19 miles an hour in a 14-minute period. So it's a pretty quick deceleration that will be felt by the crew on board Integrity. First up will be the deployment of 3 forward bay cover parachutes to pull the forward bay cover. That's essentially the top cover on the vehicle that must be pulled away from the rest of Integrity to ensure the deployment of the rest of the parachute system. So 3 forward bay cover parachutes will be deployed at 7:03 and 22 seconds p.m. Central Time. Each one of these chutes is 7 feet in diameter, weighing about 8 pounds apiece, 100% Kevlar. Those chutes are deployed at an altitude of about 24,000 feet when the vehicle is traveling at about 350 miles an hour. That'll be followed in quick succession by the deployment of 2 drogue chutes, and you'll hear all of this in real time. 2 drogue chutes will be deployed to stabilize the crew module during descent, establishing the proper conditions for the main parachute deployment that will follow imminently. The drogue chutes will deploy at 7:03 and 23 seconds p.m. Central Time, while the vehicle is traveling now just 473 feet per second. So you can see how quickly the descent rate will decelerate, and we'll be calling out altitude and rate of descent all the way through Integrity's transit across the Pacific Ocean. The main chute deployment following 3 pilot parachutes that are used to lift and deploy the main parachutes from the crew module forward bay. That's followed finally by main parachute deploy. That's the key thing we're looking for. These 3 large parachutes that will deploy at 7:04 and 44 seconds p.m. Central Time at an altitude of about 5,400 feet above the ocean. And at this point, Integrity will be traveling just 198 feet per second. The main parachutes, the 3 large orange and white parachutes that you'll be seeing, are 116 feet in diameter. They weigh 310 pounds apiece. Each parachute is about 265 feet long. You'll see them reef in that typical manner that you see parachute deployments for a spacecraft that is landing on land in the case of Russian Soyuz vehicles, or in the case of Dragons landing in the Gulf or off the coast of California. So 11 parachutes will be employed during the descent of Integrity for its splashdown, and the current time that we have from Flight Dynamics for splashdown on Friday night is 7:07 and 6 seconds p.m. Central Time, 5:07 and 6 seconds p.m. Pacific Time, which is about 2.5 hours before sunset out in the Pacific. Once Integrity splashes down in the Pacific, Navy helicopters and fast boats will be deployed to arrive by the capsule as quickly as possible. Here in Mission Control, we'll be first conducting the power down of the electrical systems and ensuring that no toxic gases are emanating from Integrity. The one thing, of course, we'll be looking for at splashdown is the orientation of the vehicle. If it's stable 1, we'll know, and that means it is upright. If it's stable 2, it will be upside down, but the system known as CMOOS by its acronym, the Crew Module Uprighting System, which consists of 5 large inflatable airbags at the top of the spacecraft, will be inflated nonetheless, whether it's stable 1 or stable 2, through helium that will maintain a stable upright orientation for Integrity. to allow the start of the recovery operations. It is anticipated that it will take about 45 minutes to an hour to extract the crew from the vehicle. The extraction process, led by Navy divers and flight surgeons, will have Christina Cook exiting the vehicle first, followed by Victor Glover, followed by Jeremy Hansen, and the commander, Reed Wiseman, will be last off the ship. Once in the large inflatable raft that will be erected and buttressed up alongside the spacecraft, it's called the front porch. The crew will make sure that they are getting their Earth legs back after 9 days of weightlessness, and one by one they'll be fitted with harnesses to hoist them up to 2 hovering Navy helicopters. Christina Cook will be first up into helicopter number 1, followed by Jeremy Hansen into helicopter number 2. Victor Glover is third up in helicopter number 1. He will join Christina Cook, and Reed Wiseman will be last, going up into helicopter 2 to join Jeremy Hansen for a short flight back to the deck of the USS John Murtha, which is the recovery ship. Once the crew is on board, they'll be taken into the medical bay for more comprehensive medical exams, and will spend some time aboard the ship before they're helicoptered off the ship back to San Diego, and ultimately to board a NASA plane to fly back to the Johnson Space Center. Integrity systems functioning very well. No issues being worked by the flight control team, no issues that would preclude a nominal entry in splashdown for the crew on Friday. One more note, I think of interest, of course, is the heat shield on Integrity and how it likely will fare during the high-speed return to Earth for Integrity's astronauts on Friday. I went through this a bit earlier today, but I think it's worth repeating. On Artemis I, we flew a trajectory known as a skip entry, which means we performed an initial dip into the Earth's atmosphere to dissipate some energy, to basically bleed off excess speed. Then we lofted or skipped out of the atmosphere, then dipped a second and final time into the atmosphere before splashing down in the eastern Pacific Ocean south of San Diego. As part of routine post-flight inspections and video analysis, there were some areas of mechanical char liberation that were observed, which created a cause for concern for a critical part of that spacecraft. It should be noted that the chemical decomposition of ablative heat shields like the one on Orion is expected. That mechanical liberation of the char is what was unexpected on Artemis I. The chemical decomposition occurs as the heat shield material heats up and decomposes, a process known as pyrolyzation, which generates gas during entry. The generation rate of gas is a function of the temperature of the heat shield material known as avcoat. As those gases are being generated, a layer of char is forming on the surface of the heat shield, and the char is porous. Now, ideally, what you want to have happen is for the gas to escape through the pores in the char layer faster than new gas is generated. On Artemis I, however, we found that the temperature profile experienced by the heat shield was such that this was not happening on areas of the heat shield with less porous avcoat. That resulted in a pressure buildup under the surface of the char layer, and when the pressure got high enough, portions of the char layer liberated from the heat shield. As a result of the post-flight analysis, and by the way, it should be mentioned that by all estimation and all analysis, had a crew been aboard Artemis I, it would have been safe for them to return. However, this was an off-nominal occurrence. As a result, NASA gathered experts from across the agency and private industry, including establishing an independent review team to investigate that issue. All agreed with one conclusion. For Artemis II, it was agreed to fly a shorter entry trajectory, in other words, a shorter amount of time from entry interface to a splashdown site, to avoid a temperature buildup or a temperature profile conducive to higher rates of gas generation as the aft coat chemically decomposes. Now, for Artemis III and beyond, we're going to redesign that manufacturing process to make the aft coat blocks such that we will have material that starts out more porous, allowing more efficient gas dissipation as that char layer forms, which will be a critical feature for longer skip entry trajectories returning from the south pole of the moon, which of course is our destination for lunar landings at the outset.